This is Changemakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
Joining me this week is ChangeMaker Richard Sciortino, the co-founder of Brinshore Development. Richard has over 3 decades of housing and economic development experience and now serves as president of the construction arm of Brinshore Development, where he directs acquisition, planning, development, and construction activities. Richard, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Katie. I'm glad to be here.
Before we go into the details about the great things that Brinshore is doing and the company's development contributions, prior to co-founding Brinshore, you worked for the city of Chicago. Is this where your affordable housing connection and your path began, or was it somewhere else?
No, that's exactly right. I had been working in development and before that in commercial real estate, but I was presented with an opportunity at the city to create a program to acquire abandoned buildings. This is shortly after the savings and loan crisis, so there was a lot of abandonment in the city of Chicago, and there was a tremendous demolition effort going on that was tearing down a lot of our history. So I came to work for the city of Chicago to create a program to quick take abandoned buildings and give them to community developers for housing and economic development and other opportunities. And as a result of it, I was exposed to affordable housing, and that was how I entered that business.
So tell us about Brinshore. First, maybe what type of developments are in the pipeline or what you're, predominantly working on.
Yeah, we have, we started probably 15 or 16 years ago working in the space of converting former public housing sites into new mixed income communities. And that that's expanded for us in a number of different ways. So we're still involved in these sort of long-term phased master plan communities. We're doing a number of them in Kansas City, Omaha, and Norfolk, Virginia, to name a few. And similar to those, we're working with a group out of Atlanta called Purpose-Built Communities that essentially does the same thing, but in place of the HUD grant, which serves as a source of financing, they use philanthropy as that to replace that source. And so we're working in Omaha with the Buffett Foundation, Sherwood Foundation, and in Grand Rapids with another family philanthropy foundation, and in Houston on another project. So we've been active in this idea of creating mixed income communities that are both transformative and community based. Some of the other things that we're doing are more targeted. We're working in Houston and Los Angeles on projects that are providing affordable housing for students, full-time students who are raising children. Generally speaking, it's women who are raising children. For example, in Houston, we're developing a project adjacent to the University of Houston, and there are services provided, childcare services, support services, counseling services for the mothers who are raising kids. We've also done a number of projects working with firms that provide individuals that have disabilities, so supportive services for people with disabilities. In some cases, they are developments that are solely devoted to that. In other cases, they're integrated into a larger mixed income community. And then also homelessness prevention is a big cause of ours. So we're working on a number of projects where we reserve units or apartments for people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. And then the last one that I've mentioned, and there are many, many other examples, but we've been working with providing artists a place in some of our developments as a mechanism for not only providing affordable housing for artists, but also opportunities for other people in the building as well as in the community to work with the artists. So in many cases, we're providing lower rent to artists so that they will help us curate and program an art space, or they occupy retail or commercial space on the ground floor for arts activities. It's just a means of activating spaces.
That's a wide variety of addressing affordable housing needs. Let's talk about the one that you mentioned that's really a standout that I don't hear a lot of, development or activity. And that is the one that you mentioned for single mothers or students raising children. How did that come to be?
We have seen that in our development. The primary financing source for affordable housing is the low-income housing tax credit. And oddly enough, the one group that is excluded from qualifying for these affordable apartments are students. Full-time students are not allowed in affordable housing that is financed through low-income housing tax credits. But there is one exception, and that is if the parent is raising children and going to school full-time post-secondary education. So we explored this. We had heard of a program in Louisville, and so we went down and looked at it. It's run by a group in Louisville, Kentucky called Family Scholars. We got to know the executive director at Family Scholars, and she was really interested in working with us in other places and sort of expanding the reach of their mission. So she has been acting as a consultant to us and identifying agencies that could provide the types of supportive services that are needed for the mothers who are going to school full time, and also connecting us with opportunities for childcare. So it's an amazing program. I've seen firsthand the effect of it in a couple of projects in Louisville, Kentucky. I've met with some of the mothers. Circumstances that brought them to these places are truly incredible. The one mother that I had met had gotten pregnant, and she came from a very religious family. Her father essentially threw her out of the home, and she ended up in a Catholic transitional facility, and they had heard of this program and introduced her to Kathy Dykstra, who runs the Family Scholars. And we got to meet her, and she was on her way to graduating from the University of Louisville with honors. And I believe that she's now either graduated or about to graduate. Met her beautiful little daughter. She was living in a very nice 2-bedroom apartment. She could afford the rent. There were counseling services for her to help her as she was transitioning into this higher education, and also daycare that was run by the University of Louisville that her child attended. So all of that support enabled her to finish her degree and changed her life. I mean, I'm sure that her life would have taken a completely different path had she not been introduced to this source of affordable housing.
That is an amazing continuum here because, you think about this, you've got education attainment, you've got economic self-sufficiency, that leads to generation improvements. And it's all because you guys have been able to wrap around, a need in a city that probably has higher rents because of the university and such being there. And so you've been able to take affordable, safe housing and just really expand on that so much. How does Brinshore as a developer, how do you guys, remain committed to such a comprehensive development? You're not just about construction here, but, how are you guys getting engaged in such innovative sort of life development planning here?
It's a bit cliche, but I feel like we really do have a mission and a purpose. We feel like we are in some ways agents of the public. We're taking an awful lot of public subsidy to make these affordable housing projects work. And so we feel like we really owe it to ourselves and to the communities we work in to make sure that we're not just looking at affordable housing as a means of providing housing, and that we're really looking at what it can do to the surrounding community. So we first and foremost, when we start our developments, we're always thinking about what is it that we can do that, or what is it that we can provide that is not being served in the community. And again, in some cases, it's as simple as providing units that are available for people with disabilities, or units that are made available for people that are homeless. But in some cases, it goes beyond that. So, for example, in Chicago, we started a project. We just completed a project that about 2 years before we started, someone had built a very nice project with a Walmart as the anchor tenant and affordable housing above it. And the community felt like they were not providing opportunities for local retailers. They all welcomed the addition of Walmart and groceries and such, but there was no space that was made available for local retailers. So we came in and we had proposed that we would develop a project that had space on the ground floor that we would subsidize using a variety of city resources, in this case TIF. And the effect of it was that we were able to provide space, 18,000 square feet of retail space for local retailers. It turns out that all of them happened to be African American. This is in an African American neighborhood. The rent was probably half of what it was nearby. We filled up all the spaces with really interesting quality tenants. It's been a complete home run. It's just surprising how many businesses that were either operating in places that they couldn't afford, or weren't operating, or were operating out of their houses and decided that they wanted to take the next step into a retail space. So those kinds of things are, it's just the way that we approach our businesses. We're essentially community developers. What is it that we're giving back?
So when you start to tackle a project, there's so many different aspects as far as, land use, zoning, community, all of the dynamics of trying to figure out, what size of unit and what's it need to look like, and, what are the amenities of the property, or commercial or mixed use, whatever those pieces are. But at the core, you have to start to build those community partnerships. So how do you, as a company, how do you start that process? If you were going into a brand new city, what are some of the first steps that you take to build those community partnerships?
That's a really good question, because I'd say probably 2/3 of our, if not more, of our developments are in joint venture partnerships, and they take many different forms. But in all cases, our partners represent the community in some form or fashion. And it may be that our partners, and when I say partners, I mean that they are part of our ownership structure. They share in the benefits, and it may be an organization that is providing some of the services that dovetail with the narrative of the project. So, for example, if we're providing units for people with disabilities, well, then we're going to partner with an agency that provides services for that type of client. But we've also, in many cases, we have found partners who we're mentoring. So in Milwaukee, for example, we came there, and we came to Milwaukee, hadn't done a project in Milwaukee. We went to a community development finance agency that we'd worked with. It's a national agency. And I said, hey, listen, we'd like to find a partner here that represents the community. Maybe we could provide some capacity building and so on. And so it turns out that Marquette and the University of Wisconsin and Milwaukee had a program for developing minority developers. And so we found a woman who had been in, I believe she was worked for the correctional system, wanted to become a developer, went through this program, and as part of her final project had identified an affordable housing development, came to us through this finance agency, and we ended up developing 5 projects with her in Milwaukee, to the point that I eventually said, "Listen, you're launched. We did everything we said that could happen. You now have capacity. You have a track record. You have relationships with lenders and investors. You don't need us anymore. Go off and do your thing." And she's now an extremely successful developer in Milwaukee. And then in other instances, we will come into a place and we'll create opportunities. In Norfolk, Virginia, for example, we're partnering with a group of 4 African-American owned businesses that formed a joint venture amongst themselves to partner with us on a large redevelopment in Norfolk. And that was driven a lot by our conversations with a few elected officials who explained to us that the past history of race relations in that town were not good, and there was a lot of skepticism about how this was all going to come about, and really urged us to think hard about how we can promote equity and wealth building amongst the African American community. And so we found this group of guys. They add tremendous value to us. They're all in the construction business, very successful. They wanted to get into the affordable housing business, and we needed their expertise. And so it worked out for everybody.
Tell us about the master plan development in Omaha that you mentioned earlier. And there's something like I found so unique about this, and I wanted you to highlight for our podcast listeners.
Yeah, Omaha is a really interesting project. So there's about 25 acres that is not far from downtown Omaha. It's really on the edge of downtown Omaha, close to Creighton University and their hospital system. But it's located in a neighborhood that has been traditionally disinvested, African American community. There's an interstate that bisects the neighborhood, as we've seen in many places around the country, that separated parts of this traditional African American neighborhood. And so the Buffett family, Susan Buffett in particular, was trying to do something to be catalytic. So many plans had been made and shelved in that community, and I believe she felt like someone really had to do something that mattered. So they formed a not-for-profit that's called 75 North, with the specific mission of redeveloping this 25-acre parcel in a way that really made a difference. So we were selected to be their development partner, and what they asked us to do was create a place that was a place of choice, that African Americans who maybe were from Omaha and lived in different places, as well as people from the community and other people who needed affordable housing, would choose this place as a place to live, not out of necessity, but as a place that they wanted to live. So we thought through, some of the things that we thought were necessary. As I mentioned, this purpose-built community model really focuses on education as the primary driver for changing the dynamics in a particular community. Unfortunately, in Nebraska, and they use charter schools as the vehicle to do that. Unfortunately, in Nebraska, charter schools are not allowed. So we had to work through the public school system, and we weren't able to provide a school on the footprint of our 25 acres, and the closest school was several blocks away, and we felt like that was going to prevent us from really making an impact, and we had to do something else besides that. So we decided to create this town square, as I liked to call it. We eventually named it the Accelerator. It's a 60,000 square foot building that we built, really progressive, interesting architecture that really demonstrated an intention to catalyze the neighborhood in some different way. And the occupants of the building are Creighton University has a health facility there, health education facility. The local community college opened a branch there. There is a code school. There is a food hall that we built. It's in a food desert. There's a 25,000 square foot greenhouse and aquaponics facility. There is a space that's made available for events, an event space for people. That people told us that there was no place in this community to have a wedding reception, for example. So that was the sort of hub of the community, and then we built the affordable housing around it. And again, we're really careful about our architecture and what it says to the community and to the people that live there. And so we used 3 different architects from different places, one from Chicago, one from a local architect from Omaha, another from Kansas City. And they all brought a different perspective. And turns out it's created a wonderful neighborhood, and it's had the exact effect that we wanted. There are people who live there who could choose to live anywhere in the city of Omaha and have chosen this neighborhood. And I think a lot of it has to do with not just the planning, but the design and the architecture and the product that we delivered.
This Omaha example, and really, the other ones as well, Milwaukee and Norfolk, all of them are touching on all of the things that we in the affordable housing like to see in practice roll out, whether it is the leveraging with the community, whether it is the partnering and funding through multiple sources, whether it's foundations or what other types of entities may be in there, the incorporation of design, the incorporation of unique features that address services or education. It's no longer to where affordable housing is just about the construction of the unit. And these examples that you have highlighted are really, really innovative, but they really need to be the baseline that everybody is doing, that all of the developers and all of the communities are asking for and getting. And so we like to hear how Brinshore and how you and your team are just really making that to be the expected delivery model in affordable housing. But we also know the reality that you guys are the innovators here as well. How many affordable housing units do you think that you and your team have been a part of in production, or, how many dollars in investments do you think you guys have leveraged nationwide over the years?
Yeah, we're approaching 10,000 apartments, and my guess is it's somewhere close to $2 billion worth of real estate. I know right now we've started to over the last 5 years we've intentionally expanded into a few different markets. So we now have, I think we have about $400 million of affordable housing under construction. We're in 15 different states, and we have about 1,500 units in our pipeline. So we've gotten much more active. I will say some of the things that you just touched on about our approach. It's been our calling card. It's introduced us to some of these new markets that we haven't been in. Most of the work that we're doing is we're being selected to do it. We're partnering with groups in Texas with the Buffalo Bayou Foundation and Connect Communities and so many others where we're actually competing through a request for proposal and getting selected. So whatever we're doing is resonating with the people that we're partnering with. There's so much to do. There's an insatiable demand for affordable housing, and my God, we see what's going on now with the price of housing, and that's all trickling down into rent escalation, and this affordability crisis is really going to expand, unfortunately, as prices keep increasing. So this need for affordable housing and innovative and quality affordable housing is really in high demand, I think.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, hang on for a minute, Richard, because we have to take a break. But coming up in the second part of my conversation with ChangeMaker Richard Sciortino, the co-founder of Brinshore Development, Richard and I discuss the concept of converting unused office buildings into rental housing.
I do believe that there's a future there and they're usually in places that are well located. for affordable housing. They're built in places that serve businesses, which are often places that we want to provide affordable housing because they're close to jobs and so on and so forth.
Thanks for listening to Changemakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.